Become a patron at www.patreon.com/Golden Era Bookworm for hard to find books, scans of rare photos, and articles on the Golden Era of bodybuilding. Hi everybody, Golden Era Bookworm here. Today I'd like to address a particular question that I've been asked, and that is if one can broaden the skeletal shoulder frame. This, I believe, is a very difficult question to answer, and I would best choose to address this particular question with information based on an article written by David Willoughby, as well as another article that was written by the great Steve Reeves. Now, in Steve's opinion, as well as David Willoughby's, one could broaden the shoulder girdle by stretching out the connective tissue surrounding the scapulae and by also expanding the rib cage. And the reasoning behind also expanding the rib cage is that the scapula being attached to the rib cage means that if you actually expand and enlarge the rib cage, the scapula which are attached to it would naturally also widen. Makes sense. But this broadening could be further enhanced through stretching the connective tissue, which is what the topic of today's video is about. Now, I've attempted to even compare before and after photos of Steve Reeves, and it appears that he has broadened his shoulders over time, as other bodybuilders have as well in the silver and golden era, but without proper before and after measurements, especially of for example, of their biacromial length. It's very hard to say whether there was much of an effect, but nevertheless, today I will present the stretches recommended to loosen up the joints of the shoulder girdle, which according to the silver era bodybuilders and author David Willoughby led to a broadened shoulder frame. Now, before exploring the different exercises recommended back in the silver era, I thought I'd show the scapula, otherwise known as the shoulder girdle, and its associated musculature and connective tissue, that is the tendons and ligaments, etc. And it is the loosening of all these connective tissues and stretching of this tissue which is supposed to be affected by the following stretching exercise that I will now outline. Now, one of the very first things recommended by David Willoughby was stretching the arms out in front to stretch the scapula out. And the recommended exercise doesn't necessarily have a name in the West, but it does have a name in yoga. And it is very similar, for example, to doing the swimming crawl stroke in a standing way. And it actually looks a lot like Virabhadrasana, which is otherwise known as the warrior pose in yoga, as shown in this photo. No, you don't have to go to the Himalayas to do it. You can just do it at home, and you don't have to be in a deep lunge like this yogi is doing here. But basically what you want to do is you want to do it standing, reach one arm in front of you whilst the opposite arm is reaching back. And you want to stretch the shoulders apart, and I mean stretch as far as possible. And you want to do this and then alternate. So then you want to switch arms and stretch the opposite way, and again and again and again. So basically you're just stretching. Let's say you stretch your right arm forward and left arm back, and then you switch, then you do the right arm backwards and the left arm forwards, and you basically alternate stretching front and back with your arms. And it kind of looks like the swimming crawl stroke as mentioned in the article, but obviously you're not swimming, you're just stretching, right? Now, what I find really particular about this stretch and the comments made by David Willoughby, his recommendations is, firstly, you want to start off with 50 stretches a day, minimum, right? And you want to increase this to 100 stretches a day. And then, eventually, over time, you want to do 100 stretches on both sides. So it's for each arm, so in total it's actually 200 movements that you're doing. You want to do it several times a day, especially if you want to induce the length of the collarbones. Now, this is the statement that I find most difficult to digest, I guess, because it's very difficult to prove that you can stretch out your collarbones, especially in a fully grown adult. Now, David Willoughby does state he does state that the younger you are, of course, the greater the effect of promoting length of the shoulder bones, and that is the collarbone. So, I mean, in that respect, at least he makes sense. But the argument is made that over time, for example, swimmers develop extremely wide shoulders due to a very similar action in the swimming stroke called the swimming stroke called the crawl, right? And so, whether this is truly a true statement from David Willoughby, I can't prove, and I don't know whether science has proven either. But I'll let you be the judge of that. If you want to try it yourself, starting off with 50 stretches, increasing it to 100, and then doing several times a day for over a year, and you find that your shoulder bones grow, well, that's great. That is, your collarbones grow. But I don't know myself. I've never tried it, but this is what is recommended, at least by David Willoughby. And of course, to not have great expectations if you're a fully grown adult, because the broadening of the bones is most likely to occur in younger athletes. Now, a second exercise that is recommended is a stretching movement, otherwise known as the door stretch. Well, you basically want to stand a few feet away from the door, as shown actually in the bottom picture here with this young man. And you want to place your hands about shoulder level and dip. You want to dip in between the doorway. So you want to have actually the door open, not closed like the young man here, more like in the picture above. And you want to dip and actually push all the way through as if you were doing, I guess, a more extreme push-up in the doorway. And as you do that, you want to really bring your scapula together. You're not doing a push-up. You're actually stretching out the shoulder girdle. And now, similar to the photo above, you want to vary the hand position as well as the arm height to affect the full shoulder girdle. And again, you want to do this several times a day, and the effect that this should have is not necessarily inducing any bone length. No claims are made about that, but it should definitely loosen the muscles and the connective tissue surrounding the shoulder girdle. That is the door stretch. Now, another I find very effective exercise is the shoulder dislocation, which was also recommended by David Willoughby. And it's very simple to do, and anyone can do it at home if you've got a little broomstick or a stick as shown there. You can also just attach a mop stick, whatever, it doesn't really matter. Just use, you can even use a TheraBand, for example, or a rope. But what you want to do is, at arm's length, grab the rope or the dowel or the rod, whatever it is, at slightly wider or even much wider than hip width or shoulder width, and it really depends on your own flexibility. And keeping your arms straight, you want to actually bring that rope or dowel or rod overhead and behind you until it touches the back of your thighs or your butt, depending on the height that it reaches behind you. And then you want to, in an arc-like motion, again bring it back down in front of you and repeat several times. This, of course, is a very effective exercise that is highly recommended, especially by physiotherapists. It fixes posture and also fixes round shoulders. I've done it many times myself, and it's excellent, for example, for also athletes wishing to enter Olympic weightlifting, because it does loosen up the shoulders, especially for exercises such as the snatch. It is a truly excellent exercise, and it will loosen and stretch the shoulder joints. Now, a rather interesting exercise, which was actually familiar back then, especially with muscle control practitioners such as Maxick, was the scapular throwout. And it is, I guess, shown in these two different photographs, the two different progressive steps that one can take. What you want to do is throw the shoulder blades out. And to do this, you need to perform the movement where you interlace the fingers and extend the arms overhead as high as possible. And this will already start stretching out the scapula. And what you want to then do is to throw out the scapula. You almost want to feel like you're stretching or pulling your arms outwards or sidewards, right? And you really want to pull them as far as possible outwards, as if someone was trying to basically pull your arms apart, right? And this begins to throw out the shoulder blades. And again, you want to repeat this several times a day. And over time, what you'll find is, especially if you practice in front of a mirror, it begins to throw and force the scapula out. And you'll actually see in front of the mirror a bulge starting to appear under the armpits. And when you've achieved that, you've basically got incredible flexibility in the scapula. And a lot of strength there as well. It's excellent for also strengthening the scapula and the rotator cuff muscles that are associated with the scapula. So it's an excellent exercise just for overall shoulder health. Now, the more advanced version is to actually progress from that and clasp the hands behind you, as shown in the bottom photo here by Maxic, and place your hands clasped on top of your head and continue to throw the scapula even further out. And this is a really extreme exercise, and I guess was one of the highlights of any muscle control show. You were truly a muscle control practitioner if you could perform this feat, and it really did wow people, because yeah, you basically could throw your scapula out and have this bulging appearance under your armpit. It looked fantastic in those shows back in the silver and bronze era. An excellent exercise, again, for stretching out the tendons, ligaments, connective tissue, and muscles surrounding the scapula. Not seen nowadays, but I hope that my video can obviously bring this exercise back. I'm actually practicing it myself. Now, if you're interested in the topic of broadening the skeletal frame, I've just written a book called How I Develop Broad Shoulders by Steve Reeves, which is based on his articles and interviews. And the book is structured so that first, Steve gives his opinion about broadening shoulders. And he does, as I mentioned earlier, believe that one can broaden the shoulders up to 6 inches, which is a pretty amazing claim. And within the book, you're going to find out how he believes you can broaden your shoulders by 6 inches. And basically, there's 3 phases. We're talking about shoulder muscle hypertrophy, obviously. And here one can add up to 4 inches in his own opinion. But through the expansion of the rib cage and the lengthening and stretching of the associated shoulder joint, according to Steve, you can actually add another 2 inches. So it's a very interesting read. And if you wish to purchase the book, it's on my website, www.goldenerabookworm.com. And within the book as well, you'll find exercises that are important for each of these phases: shoulder hypertrophy, ribcage expansion, and broadening of the shoulder frame, as well as particular exercises that Steve Reeves developed himself, all found in this book, How I Developed Broad Shoulders by Steve Reeves. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this video on the topic of whether one can broaden one's shoulders or not. I'm kind of on the fence with that. I do believe that one can stretch out the shoulder joints and therefore I guess improve the mobility of the scapula and make them appear to be wider, but whether one can broaden the collarbone, especially in adulthood, I'm always doubtful about such things. I'm pretty sure you can do it as a young adult or adolescent, but later on in life, of course, it would become increasingly difficult. So I leave you with this great photo of Reeves performing the Reeves deadlift, which is going to be the topic of the next video. And I hope you've enjoyed watching the video. If you have, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't to the Golden Era Bookworm. Leave me a comment and thank you for watching. If you'd like to support my work, please donate via PayPal or become a patron, or visit my website for books and courses on old school bodybuilding. Anyway, that's it for me. This is the Golden Era Bookworm. Bye for now.
Hi everybody, I just want to recommend this phenomenal book, Vince's Secret Locker, volume number 2 by Carl Coyne. I've been looking at this for about 4 weeks and I can't put it down. If you get a chance, check it out. He also has a part 1 that I highly recommend also. Vince was the trainer to the stars and had an amazing, interesting gym that today there's still not equipment like it around. It was all made out of wood. He'll be on our radio show coming up probably in the next couple weeks or so. Have a great day, and again, highly recommend this book.